and welcome back to Continuing the Conversation. AI newsflash, Grok 3 is here, and Elon says it's the smartest AI on Earth. It's fascinating to see the AI world buzzing about Grok 3. Like children getting excited in a toy store looking at the newest, shiniest toy, while the adults in the room are wondering if they even remember to pay the electric bill. I look at all of this hype and wonder, what does it mean for me? What does it mean for us? To help us make sense of all of it and cut through the candy rush, I'm thrilled to welcome back Rob, the CEO of CharmIQ. Welcome, Rob.
Hello, and thank you.
Yes. In our previous conversations, you compared this AI revolution to a public Manhattan project, which I found very interesting. With Grok's 3 arrival and the smartest AI claims, does it feel like a pivotal moment or just another Tuesday in AI land? Is there a deeper shift beneath the Gronk buzz that leaders really need to understand?
Wow, yeah. So, what a whirlwind tour we're on. We should actually have calendars that kind of forewarn us when these things are imminent. So, take for example, we knew Grok was coming. We know Anthropic is going to be coming very shortly. We just had the Google and OpenAI, so we got a couple of weeks before we can wait for their new one to come out. We just had DeepSeek, and we had that other one that I'm not remembering, another 52. So what does all that mean? What does that mean? So the I struggle each day because I'm in between this world of this is mundane because it's the same thing that happened yesterday, meaning the change. Like we have the same change in this space happens every single day. And that's a bit of a grind.
Mhm.
And then there's the flip side, which is like, are we getting extra value out of these things? Are we seeing improvements? Are we doing these things? And then somewhere in the middle is just like all the buzz and everything that's running around and going on. And what does it mean? So let me try to break this down a little bit in terms of how I think about it.
Mhm.
Um, so everyone meaning the people that review these things and so forth, there's these kind of standard benchmarks that everyone uses. And these have been developed, some of them are from a long time ago, some of them are literally being developed today and get supplanted tomorrow. But we have these very interesting, testable benchmarks. And the reason for that is you want something that's non-subjective, right? So you can say, is it yes or no? Think about multiple choice exams, like is it answering ABC correctly, et cetera. And what's interesting though is that when it comes to the workflows that I do on a daily basis and things like that, they don't map to those things. So if you think about how you might use charm on your daily basis, right? So let's say I have to prepare for this interview today, right? So I'll come up with some questions. I'll look at today's news. I'll bring that all together in a context. I'll use some of my charms that help me think about how do I think about what's going on, and I'll go through it. And it's very nonlinear, which is specifically why I designed Charm the way that I did. It's not a chat where I just go A, B, C, D. I bring in some ideas, I bring in some context, I go back, I go around. Like I'm just working through this thing.
Right.
And the long story short is that this has nothing to do with the benchmarks that are available.
Mm.
So the way that I use the tool, and anyone who uses Charm, for example, uses it has nothing to do with these benchmarks. So that's fascinating, right? Because all the things that we do, we don't know whether they get better or worse with some of these technologies that come out. All that we hear is that, it's at 96% on
Right.
some such thing. And again, they tend to look like your SAT test or tests or things like that you've taken in school. They're typically provide a context, provide a question, provide an answer. And it's really just a single turn. It's really just a single question answer. Sure, some of them have a bit of a dialogue to them, but again, it tends to be very linear and whatnot in its flow. So um, so that's one side, which is
Mhm.
again, I would say for most of us that use thinking tools rather than like just do this task for me tool in terms of these LLMs. Like these benchmarks don't help us at all. They don't represent what we're doing. The question is, should they represent what they're doing? I don't know. But again, at the end of the day, the benchmarks don't do that. And so that's kind of one bucket. The second bucket is that these benchmarks are published, they're known. So just as if you've ever helped a student prep for the SATs, you know you can get all of the previous tests, you can get all of the previous questions. And basically, when you learn the formula that is the SAT or the any of the other standardized tests, you know that you get much further on those tests. Maybe not learning more knowledge, but learning how the test works and
Right.
learning techniques that work for that test.
Yes.
And if I had to make an assessment, my gut says that that's what the models are doing really, really well right now, is they are learning the tests. They
Mhm.
are learning the way to do really well on these benchmarks. Again, does that apply to, are they actually getting smarter? Are they actually? And the short answer is yes, but it's just, I would say we can't measure it using these tests. There's like the ARC challenge that just came out. They're working on the second ARC challenge and so forth. And they're really trying to come up with tests that are very, um, abstract, so you can test abstract thinking. And again, what does that mean? And again, can it learn the test and it just do well because it understands the test? And the answer is yes, and of course, and sure. So like those are interesting things. So every time you hear, I'm trying to rope this all the way back to,
Yeah.
is Grok 3 the smartest model out there? And the only way you can say that is by simply looking at these benchmarks, which
Mhm.
I've just spent the past 5 minutes telling you that may or may not represent anything actually good or useful or meaningful to somebody, their daily life of using these tools. So sure, it may be the most bestest whatever, but on a scale that doesn't really match what you care about. Um,
Right.
so
I think what I'm hearing you say, it's we're hearing like smarter, faster models, but like is smart even the point? Like, yes, the models are learning. Yes, they're growing. Yes, they're getting new questions every day from simple prompts or questions, right? But like smart for whom? Smart for what purpose?
yeah.
Smart with context, right?
Mhm.
That's like, what's your take on smart, actually, what it means for leaders facing real world challenges? I mean, these models are great, these tools are great, but when it all boils down to it, smartest might be the wrong focus.
Yeah, and that's interesting because where I struggle with the models is more in terms of, I would call it constraint density.
Hmm.
So the way that I think about when I'm working with these things is, and where I see them limited the most is if you tell it to do N things, at what size N is it such that it stops doing those things reliably? And because you do that a lot, like again, when I work in Charm, you'll want it to do something and you'll say, well, but I want it to use this voice and I don't want it to use these words and it shouldn't do this and it should do this. And you have all these should and shouldn'ts, these constraints that bound the system.
Right.
And it does, well, one, it's amazing that it does anything at all. So I'll just say that, flat out, it's mind blowing that these things can take a random set of examples of stuff that you're just talking about and give you something useful. Like that's just,
Yeah.
but on top of that, once you kind of get past that first holy crap moment and you're actually trying to find value in it, you
Hmm.
realize that once you get past again what I call this constraint density problem, it it gets really kind of, so let me go another way. When you work with a person, you can kind of feel out where their limits are. And once they get beyond those limits, it tends to be they do all of the old stuff really well. And then you give them new things, and all of a sudden, those are the things that you expect them to not do very well.
Right.
And you kind of take your humanist aspect into these LLMs. And what I find is that that's actually not true. Is if it's gotten really good at doing the first five things and you give it the sixth, all of a sudden it's randomly not doing one of the six that you have. And it's just like, well, but you did the first five great. So like what, like do that again, like take it back.
Right.
Uh, and I
Right.
find that all the time. So I would say, and this is something I'm going to try as a professional and somebody in the industry, I'm going to try to make my voice heard more because no one's focusing on like this information constraint density stuff. They don't even talk about it. So
Hmm.
I think we need a way to talk about it. They're just simply trying to solve these benchmarks, but the benchmarks may or may not determine this. And again, when you're in a real worldy kind of situation, think about a legal document, all the where is's and clauses and everything else. Like you want it to be able to take that density of constraints and repeatedly and assuredly apply them across the board. And again, that's where I would see these things falling down. Once you hit their density limit, it's basically, no holds barred. That's so that's where you would not categorize that in a smartness
Right.
standpoint. You would categorize it more in terms of like consistency or like repeatability or like can you trust it kind of sense. And we don't put that in the smartness thing. So when we talk about the latest and greatest smartest models, I'll be honest, I don't care if it's smarter. I just want to know, can it do the same basic thing, but can I just stack them on top of each other? It doesn't have to be harder per se to do the bunch of them. It just needs to be consistent. So for me personally, those are the types of things that I would love to see, even if we kept the smartness exactly the same as it is today. But if you like widened the density factor by an order of magnitude or two,
Mhm.
I think that would be amazing, right? Because
Yeah,
again,
yes.
when you look at a legal document, the individual constraints are actually not hard. Like, payment has to happen in such and such term. It cannot include such a thing or whatever. Like, those things are not complicated at all. But
Hmm.
again, the density of them is what makes that problem
Yes.
challenging. Even us as humans, it makes it
Yeah.
challenging. And to have a machine that was smart enough but could handle that entire density would be amazing. And again, we don't have benchmarks for it, so we don't know if it gets better or worse. And it's one of those things that we should really talk about more. So again, going back to like, are the models smarter or not? I would say almost I don't care. There are
Right.
facets of the model, and let me take one more,
Hmm.
which is the multimodality part of it. So when you look at when you take an image and you ask the dude to like give it an invoice, and you say, hey, like give me the invoice number on the thing. Can it find it and is it accurate? Like that's not smart to me. That
Right.
has nothing to do with smart. Like that is a repeatable task that is a thing. And what I would say though, just on this topic, is they have gotten much better at more repeatably
Yeah.
looking at a particular thing and finding what it is that you want and giving it to you accurately. But again, we that's not it's not a measure. You don't there's not a score that you see around those things. So yeah, again, very great question around the smartness of it, because if you think about all of the even the resources you have within your organization, you there are certain resources you have that you almost don't want smart. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a like they don't have to be smarter, right? Because typically
Hmm.
you pay more for resources that are smarter. So you realize you can fulfill a task with a less smart resource. It just, again, maybe it can hold more crap in its head, whether that's a human or the machine. So again, I would look at your organization and look at how you interact with the people around you, and what do you use about them. So I'll be Rob for a second. One of
Yeah.
the most favorite things that I love to ask friends are what of your like why is your best friend? Like what are the qualities of your best friend? And it really gives a lot of people pause, because
Hmm.
thinking about what you find value in other people is not just something you do on a daily basis. It's very kind of intrinsic, like how you determine it. It feels right. But
Right.
you can go through it. And again, I kind of give you that in terms of your good employees and your bad employees. Like,
Hmm.
sure, you have to rank them, but like, why? Like, what about it? What is it? Because they're not smart? Because they're not reliable? Like, what are it? And like, what are those facets? And I would
Right.
say those are the things that we should start to like rate our LLMs based on, not just is it smart? Because
Right.
again, I think they're smart enough today. I would love more density, but it could be just as smart.
Yeah. So building on that idea that maybe smartest might be the wrong focus, we've heard whispers, even perhaps from OpenAI itself, about the ambition to create a singular AI model, like a universal intelligence. What's your take on the one model aspiration?
So that's interesting. I have a particular, this is a hotspot for me. This is a particular pain point. So I hate magic. Like the LLMs are already magic. I don't want additional magic on top of the magic. So take, for example, this all comes from Sam Altman the other day. He had put out a tweet where effectively the scourge of the earth right now is the model picker in OpenAI. For whatever reasons, people hate that because they don't know, should I pick this one or this one?
Hmm.
And my answer is like I'm going to go in other words, let me speak of it as I think about it in Charm, which is I'm never going to get rid of the model picker because I absolutely want to pick the intelligence to money to resource to thing. And to which you'd say, well, don't you want a machine to figure that out for you? To which I say, maybe in like years, sure, but like not right now. Like we are
Right.
still learning all of this stuff. I do not want magic
Right.
because what's unfortunate is the magic that's going to choose the model is also magic, right? Like it has a ability to correctly or not correctly choose the model. So if I run something twice, like I don't want it to one time work and one time not work. And right now with a magic model, it might. And one time
Right.
it may decide this is a complicated question and give you a complicated answer. And the next time it may decide to not do that. And I don't want that right now, especially while we're still trying to understand the capabilities of these models. I don't want something else right now to try to decide for me the level to which I think there should be work put into this particular question. And again, this is all around the spectrum from the 3.5 GPT 3.5 to 4.0 to 4.0 mini to 4.0 to basically oh 01 to oh 03 small, medium, large, and then
Yeah.
basically they just want to take all of that and put it within a thing, and then they will decide if this is a question that needs thinking. And again, the way that I use these models is I want it to start with a crappier model first so that it can help me understand if I'm asking the right questions or not. And
Right.
so I love to get an initial response from a dumber model so that I can see if again, is it going in the right way? Did I ask? And most of the time with the first turn, I'm like, oh crap, like I didn't give it enough context or it doesn't know
Mm.
what I'm talking about. If it were to go behind the scenes and now spend 5 minutes chewing on this problem that I had because it thought it was difficult simply because I omitted something,
Right.
like that's terrible. So
Yeah.
again, I get from a consumer standpoint, like I just want it easy. I want it like Google. I just want to go in and it give me the answer. But I would say for the most of us, especially executives and things like that, you know that there ain't one right answer.
Right.
Everything you do is blends of gray around constraints and context that you've given it. And your answer may be very different based on time of day and things, even in your own organization. So
Right.
again, if I have some magic model that's somehow telling me which one of these I particularly want, again, I don't want that. Sure,
Right.
I'd love to play with that ability as it grows, but again, don't limit me and do that.
Yeah, and I think that's why we don't do that in CharmIQ, right? I don't, I use Charm to run my business, my consulting business. I also use Charm in my work and family life and in my home life for various different things. But I love the ability to go in and get different perspectives
Yep,
from my different charms based on their different fine-tuning abilities and personalities,
yep,
right? And so it's
exactly.
always great. Like you've always said, like, don't just get one perspective.
Nope.
Bring in another dude and say, well, what do you think about this? And they'll
Yes.
give you their perspective. And that charm might be run by a different model. So
Yep.
it is great to have riffing with the models, right?
Everyone.
And
Yeah.
with the human intelligence aspect to it, right? Because I'm the one controlling the questions, controlling the context. So I agree with you. I don't think the one, model theory is the right one, at least for not right now. But these models are evolving daily. I mean,
Daily.
it's mind-blowing. And tomorrow and next week there'll be more. So how does CharmIQ handle the constant influx? And how does CharmIQ's vision of one workspace to rule them all differ from perhaps this idea of the single model, which we already talked about? But how are
Sure.
you dealing with it as a leader and a CEO with an amazing platform like this?
Yeah, thanks. That's I was actually asked that a couple of times in the past week, which is it's interesting when these things kind of come up, and I think it was all brought about because of the Sam Altman statement about a single model.
Mm.
Um, I there's a few ways to answer this. One is again, if you are just on one platform like AI Studio or Notebook, et cetera, from Google or ChatGPT or Claude or any of the ones, if you're just on a single model, you're missing out on what's going on. So that's the first thing I would say is the we started specifically with the idea here at Charm that we weren't going to create a model and we wanted to embrace all of them
Yeah.
because just like people, there's going to be variance, and you want to, as you just said, you want to exploit that variance across them. So that's one side of it. And then the second is, how do so one of the things when it comes to building a product is I have a firm belief that you get a certain number of bets. You can't innovate everywhere. You have to choose where you're going to spread your resources and so forth. And one of the bets that I made was that the models were going to move fast. And it didn't have to end up that way. We could have ended up with two companies and just two models. Like I didn't know, but I built this thing just planning that.
Hmm.
And luckily that bet paid off.
Yes.
And so let me slightly tangent and just say one of the questions somebody had asked me was if I was building a different product, would I have built Charm, the model part, the same way that I did? And the short answer is no. And let me go into just a little bit of detail. Because I believe that the models were going to change a lot, and because I thought that there were going to be different capabilities that were exposed in these different models, and that's why I didn't want to um, let me give you the counter example, which is there's things like Open Router. I can't speak more highly of Open Router. What Open Router is a piece of middleware that you can talk to it in one way, and you can talk to all the models behind the scenes.
Oh, wow.
And it's really amazing for people who are doing proof of concept work and so forth. Basically, any and all models that are available through that,
Hmm.
and they basically do it. We can have a whole discussion on Open Router, and I just know a lot of people who are in both hardware and models and so forth, and they love it because they can make their models available on Open Router, and then people can just easily, without rewriting code and so forth, they can go in and just use them. And so those are the two things. Like, do you want to do your own integrations with the model, or do you want to use a third party like Open Router? And the reason that I specifically chose to do my own integrations with them is that I need to potentially give every new nuanced piece of ability that's available to our customers. So take, for example, um, when Google came out with their Grounded with Google Search last year, I still think this is the most underutilized and under talked about thing possible. Like you just talk to your dude. In Charm, we call it the internet researcher. You just talk to your dude. He does a Google search behind the scenes, brings back the data, shows you the Google search that he did, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I use it every day for really everything. It's fantastic. It's grounded with Google. But what's amazing about the way that we did it is if we had used Open Router, we really couldn't use that flexibility because the standard APIs that you talk through don't have that like feature of a new thing that came out that no one else had. So they're starting to integrate those things now, but we were able to do it on day one because we do custom integrations with all the models. We specifically could integrate and show, as per Google's guidelines, we have to show their chips with the searches and like all this other stuff we have to abide by, that we were able to do that. So, there'll be a crossover point at which right now it is onerous because there's a new model every week. Like just this week alone, I added the Grok 2 models because I know the Grok 3s are going to be coming available on the API, and I integrated the Perplexity models as well. And again, that's a lot of work to do each one of those. And I'll admit that the majority of the work is trying to understand the capabilities of each of those models and understand where it fits within our ecosystem. What can they do? What resources, can they handle images or not? And,
Right.
what size, and all this stuff. And so again, I think it's valuable. I think that over time, that like as these things start to normalize out and shake out and we get unified APIs for all of this, I will just be able to go to something like an Open Router and just say, great, I don't care. Just you do all of the work. People will still get the model picker that they have, but I don't
Mhm.
have to worry about doing all that integration. Um, and so from my standpoint, it's actually a ton of work, but every time that it happens, I'm forced to learn more about the models and their capabilities. And as such, it provides more value to our customers.
Yes.
Again, to be able to do the things like the Google search, citations with the Perplexity models and so forth. And so there's benefits, but again, if you're coming into this and you're building something from scratch and you don't have to eke out everything, go with the open routers, make your life infinitely easy. It's got failover, the billing is super easy. Like sure, you pay a small,
The
upcharge for it, but
Yeah,
in terms of all of the work that I do, I would easily pay that again if we were in a different
yeah.
situation. So that's a long-winded answer, but man, there's a lot to unpack in something like just as simple even that.
Yeah, there is. There is. And I mean, as a user of CharmIQ, I appreciate the the intense focus that you have on the product and the intense focus on the models. The headers and footers and the citations were key for my high schooler when doing these big projects that he had. He did not have to jump from Google and site sources and research. I mean, you've made his high school life infinitely better and his grades better because of the platform, because of the functionality of the platform. So we're incredibly grateful in my household for CharmIQ because it's cut his project and study time in half. And grades have gone, up and to the right, which has been great for him. Less stress for him, less stress for me. So, Rob, as always, this has been incredibly insightful. Thank you for helping us cut through the noise and really think about the bigger picture in this rapidly changing AI landscape. It's easy to get caught up in the noise and the daily alerts and the news in my newsletters, and sometimes I'm overwhelmed by it. And the first thing I do is go to my dudes in Charm and drop it in and say, help me make sense of this in Shalene world, because my world is infinitely different than yours. So I do appreciate my charms for that. And for everyone watching, I hope this conversation has given you some clarity and actionable insights to navigate your own AI journeys. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling you don't know where to start, or if you're even an expert in this amazing industry, I encourage you to go to charmiq.ai, check us out, invest in yourself. It's cheaper than what you're going to pay for lunch today. Give the platform a try and come join us for more continuing the conversation where we will no doubt be diving into the next wave of AI developments. Thank you, Rob, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.